Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
This podcast is brought to you in partnership with okjersey.com. Looking for football shirts? Head over to okjersey.com and enter the discount code Harry for 8% off. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Happy Friday to you all, although it's not quite a happy Friday. It could have been a much happier Friday. In fact, I would call it a frustrating Friday, because Arsenal dropped a couple of points last night at Brentford. And there'll be a lot of people that will sort of tell you today, actually, when you think about the way we played and you think about how good Brentford have been of late and what their home form looks like, etc., actually going there and getting a point, it's a good point. And, you know, take the point and run. And I get all of that. But I think the performance last night was so disappointing that it's very, very difficult to see it that way. And I know people, people will spin that the other way and say, well, no, actually, when you play badly and you still don't lose, that's a point for encouragement rather than it sort of should be seen as a negative. But for me, I can accept when the outcome doesn't go your way if I come away from the game feeling like we did everything and that we performed to a level that was good enough to win the game. I've watched and covered football long enough to know that sometimes it's just not your day. And sometimes the performance can be really, really good, really, really strong, really consistent. And one or two moments in the game go against you and you end up not winning the game. I am, and this might not be the same for everybody, but I find those easier to get over and move on from. I looked at that performance last night and I just thought to myself, how badly do you guys really want to go and win this Premier League title? People keep talking about the nerves around Arsenal, the stress around Arsenal, given it's been so long since we've won a Premier League title. And often the noises that we hear coming out of the club are to the effect of, no, we got to enjoy it. We got to embrace it. And that is the right approach to take. But it's undeniable for me that we're struggling. And it's been a while now whereby we haven't been as convincing. If I bring up sort of the Premier League form table, okay, and I think we've obviously benefited from the fact that there are other teams who have had the same issues. But you look at the Premier League form table and we're in 7th place. Okay, we've won just 2 of our last 6 Premier League games. That's not good enough. That is the sign of a team that has maybe hit a little bit of a brick wall. Now, Manchester City have won 3 of those games, which is why they've seen themselves reduce that gap on us. So it's not like everybody across the league and across the division is perfect, and we're not. But we're the ones that people are calling the champions elect. We're the ones that have a real opportunity in front of us, and we've got to go out and we've got to grasp that opportunity. And I don't feel right now that we're doing that. The draw against Liverpool was disappointing. The draw against Nottingham Forest was probably the most disappointing result of the season. Then we go and lose at home to Manchester United. We get victories, convincing victories, to be fair, over Leeds and Sunderland. But then we're not able to build on that. We go to Brentford and we drop points again. Now, by the end of the game, you could absolutely 100% say that Brentford deserved to win the game rather than Arsenal. And in that sense, we were a little bit lucky to get out with the point that we did. But I guess my point today is that, am I going to be a little bit raw in my reaction? Yes. Am I a little bit frustrated? Am I going to be a little bit more emotional than I normally would be? Yes. And that's because I've got some concerns. And these concerns go back a while. We've highlighted these things in the past when the outcomes haven't been the ones that we were after. We've also touched on them even when Arsenal have been winning football matches, because I think it's really, really important that you do that. And so last night, when I was on my way back from the G-Tech, I was thinking about what I was going to talk about on today's pod. And often I quite like the fact that we don't do the pod on the night of the game, because what it does is it allows me to just calm down, take a breather, have a look around, have a listen to what others are saying, and then decide whether I agree with that stuff or not. That can then potentially form part of my analysis, or there can be opinions that I pick up and I put straight in the bin. And that's, everybody's entitled to their opinion. That's with all due respect to those people. But I quite like the fact that I give myself a good few hours and a night's sleep in order to kind of gather my thoughts before I sit here and share my my sort of frustrations with you guys. What I did last night on the way from the G-Tech, on the way home, is I started to have all these thoughts while I was sitting on the train. It's quite an awkward train journey for me to get to the G-Tech. It's not very far, but it's one of those where I've got to make multiple changes. And so it all becomes a little bit long-winded. But what that does is it gives you time to think. And I had all sorts of thoughts going through my head, all sorts of thoughts. So when I was on the London Underground last night on the final part of my journey, I thought, hold on a minute. I need to write some of this stuff down. I need to make sure that I get my thoughts down so that when I wake up in the morning, I can have a look at them again and I can decide if I still agree with the same sentiment that I had last night. I can see if I still believe the things that I wrote down. And so I got my trusty little notebook out and I wrote down a bunch of things. You can see it's pretty much a full page. I wrote down a bunch of things that were on my mind. And I want to get some of those off my chest today on the pod. And when I look back at it this morning, there's not a lot that I would take out. In fact, there's probably not a single point that I've written down last night that I feel dramatically different about this morning. Am I a little bit calmer in the sense of, looking at the bigger picture? We're still 4 points clear. It's a good place to be. Brentford have had a really, really good season. Their form at the G-Tech's really strong. Given the way the game went, actually, we're probably quite fortunate to get out of there with a point. Am I feeling those things? And do I feel a little bit better about the bigger picture than I did last night? Absolutely. But some of the points I'm going to make about today's performance, they're things that I saw in real time. They're things that I was frustrated about at the full-time whistle. And they're things that I continue to be frustrated about this Friday morning. So we've got a lot to get through on today's pod. I started the pod a little bit earlier in terms of the live stream because there's a chance we're going to run over today. And I don't want to then be late for my next bit of work. But yeah, I've got some thoughts. I've got some feelings. I've got some concerns. And we're going to work our way through those on today's pod. Lots of hellos because there's loads and loads of you watching us this morning, which is great to see. James Nichols, agony Aunt Harry. Yeah, you can call it a little bit of therapy. If you want to call it that. Afsar says that was indeed another shocking performance, like at Forest against Liverpool, Wolves and Man United and many others. And that for me is the frustration that this performance that we saw last night, we've seen it before. And the more you see it, the more it plays on your anxieties and your nervousness about whether or not Arsenal are going to go on and win this Premier League title. Arsenal presser, I think, put this comment in before I'd sort of gone and had a peek at the form table, but it's absolutely right. Most people can accept drawing yesterday if, for example, we'd beaten Forest earlier in the year. But 2 wins in our last 6 Premier League games isn't title-winning form. Akif Naim says technical level of the team dropped significantly after the equaliser. We were never brave enough to play through Brentford's press, which is why the game became so transitional. All really, really good points. And this is why I love the chat box here in the community that we've built, because it's amazing. Rumble says, I totally get emotions, but every point we drop, it's a calamity. And every win, we've already won the title. Embrace the fight. And there was a quote from Declan Rice after the game yesterday, which I thought was very statesman-like. Was very needed and relevant and reassuring, I think, for Arsenal fans when they heard it, because he said it's been a roller coaster of a season. If anyone thinks it's going to be easy going for the title, they are naive. Absolutely. And this is why I've pushed back on people that have said, no, it's done. Arsenal are going to win it. It's already in place. It's already sorted. It's going to be easy from here on in. I've always pushed back on that opinion, whether it be here, whether it be on the radio, whether it be on a little bit of television that I do, because I've never felt that this thing was done. And I think it's dangerous to believe it's done, but it's also about finding that middle ground between being alert and aware enough of what's going on around you and the challenges that you face so that complacency doesn't creep in, but at the same time, not allowing your desire to succeed and the nervousness that we keep touching on and discussing to swallow you up. So, yeah, let's see. Jid says, please, be measured, be calm. Don't be reactionary, knowing that if we do go on to do great things, you will say, well, at the time. Be disappointed without being reactionary. I am very disappointed. Will I be a little bit reactionary? Maybe. I don't think I can help that. And you sort of say, well, at the time, as if going back and saying, well, at the time, it is problematic. If it's a case of let's not talk about anything or analyze anything based on the here and now, we might as well stop the podcast and only do it at the end of the season. Boston Gun says this is going to be a dogfight till the end. People need to calm down and stop being overly reactionary. Yeah, overly reactionary is a problem. Maybe I'm going to be overly reactionary. You can determine that yourselves. You can decide that over the course of the show. Let's start then with the team that Mikel Arteta picked. Raya in goal, Timber, Mosquera, Gabriel, and Nkapie across the back. There was no William Saliba, who had picked up some sort of illness and was unavailable as a result of that. Zubimendi and Rice in the midfield with Eza playing just in front of them. It was Madueke right, Trossard left, and Gyökeres through the middle. Now, I think I picked on my pre-game show the exact team with the exception of Saliba playing over Christian Mosquera. So I'm not going to sit here this morning and say Mikel Arteta picked the wrong team. I think with hindsight, you could make that case and you can make that argument. Did he pick the right horses for the right courses? I think there's a debate and a conversation to be had there. But if I was to sit here and go really in on Mikel Arteta, I think I'd look stupid. I think my bigger frustration, was that I don't think the game was managed in the way that it needed to be as it developed. And that is probably where I'm a little bit more frustrated. But look, I wrote down a series of questions in my little notebook yesterday. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. Okay. Before we go through individual performances, I want to just read you these questions and we can sort of briefly discuss each one. I told you today's pod's going to be a long one, so strap yourselves in. Question number 1 that I wrote down on my little notepad yesterday. Do we give off the aura of champions? Some people will say that doesn't matter. What's aura? How do you measure aura? What does aura even mean? But do you watch this Arsenal team and think we are at the level where consistently we're going to play people off the park, where consistently we're going to be able to find a way? Because to only win 2 of your last 6 Premier League games is naturally going to put doubt in people's minds about whether or not we have the credentials to go and win the Premier League title. We all know that we've got a really, really stacked squad. But last night's game got me thinking about the squad as well. And yes, we've got loads and loads of options. When you look back at the summer business, which everybody said was, brilliant, myself included, how many of those players have actually improved us? Let's look at the attacking players. Madueke, Gyökeres, I'm trying to think who else we signed in the attacking players. Eberechi, right? How much have they actually improved us as an attacking collective? I think they've raised the floor in that when Havertz or Jesus weren't available, Gyökeres was doing all right. I didn't think it was always great, but he was doing all right. Madueke's come in and done okay in Bukayo Saka's absence, and so the floor's been raised. But based on their performances, and again, nobody was to know this at the time, certainly not with the Eze signing and the Gyökeres ones. I think Madueke, there were doubts about that. I had doubts about that. But I would argue Madueke has probably been the better one of the 3 of them in terms of overall impact. I know people are going to say Gyökeres has got more goals, but I'm looking at more than just the numbers. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? You know what? That's a really good idea. Someone said in the chat, make a poll with your questions. Shall we do that? Let's do that now so that you guys can get involved in answering those questions as well. Engage with your audience. Start a poll. Do we give off the aura of champions? Okay, let's post that. The answer is simple: yes or no. Get involved. I won't put all of them because not all of them are kind of like black and white and suitable for a poll. But that's the first question. Okay, do we give off the aura of champions? Right now, I don't feel like we do. Okay. Oh, here we go. Nasai says, every time we drop points, you go into this silly state. What is wrong with you? And then when you go into the press conference, you act like a puppy towards Mikel. Grow up, mate. I've been to one press conference in about 2 months. So when we've not won more than 2 of those last 6 games, I'd love an example of when I've gone in and been like a puppy to Mikel Arteta. In fact, I never go into the post-match press conferences either. It's always pre-match. What am I supposed to do? Have a pop at the guy before he's even gone to the game? Come on, man. Let's be serious. Anyway, and this, again, this is kind of my overarching sentiment, and I'm seeing this a lot in the comments this morning. I don't think the result is alarming. I agree with this. It's the manner with which Arsenal played. And just to add to that, it's the fact that this is something we've seen many, many times before. In terms of the next question that I jotted down, what's up with Eberechi Eze? What's up with him? Why are we not getting anywhere near enough out of him? Is it the way we're using him? Is it his own performance level? Is it a confidence thing? Is, going back to the first point, the tactical instruction being provided to him not best suited to his skill set? I don't know. I don't know, because I watch him and I think when we're out of possession, you're not giving us the pressing intensity that we need. He did go into the kind of second striker role off the ball a lot yesterday to join Victor Gyökeres in that sort of press. So out of possession, we were in a 4-4-2 shape a lot of the time. But he doesn't do it with anywhere near the intensity. Like, I look at Odegaard when he does it and I think, you might nick this ball. I look at Havertz when he does it and I think, you might stretch out one of those long legs of yours and nick it. You look at Eze and you feel like when he's pressing, he's going through the motions. And I've always said that I think he's off the ball stuff. And I think this is probably relevant to Ethan Nwaneri as well, is why those 2 players haven't had the trust from Mikel Arteta that maybe a Martin Odegaard does, even though Odegaard, output-wise, has had a really poor season. On Eze, I want to see him be more proactive. I want to see him go, I'm going to get on the ball and I'm going to go left and I'm going to go right and I'm going to come deeper and I'm going to go into this pocket and that pocket, if that's what he believes is going to see him get the ball. And I want him to demand it. I agree that we work the ball into him too slowly. I really, really do. But I can't help but feel that Mikel Arteta has brought this player in that we were all really, really excited about signing, has had a look at him up close and has decided that, I'm going to stick with him right now because Odegaard's come back from injury and Odegaard's not in the greatest form either, which makes it sort of acceptable to pick Eberechi Eze in a game like this. There's no Mikel Merino, there's no Kai Havertz, etc., etc. But overall, like, there's been moments, the hat-trick against Spurs, and a couple of other performances along the way, important goals against Crystal Palace, for instance. So there's been moments that give you that bit of encouragement, but overall the performance level is not good enough. And I don't know what I put it down to. It could be any number of things. And that's where I worry, is that if I can't identify what the problem is, that leads me to stressing, to worrying, to being concerned. And I am concerned at the moment about Eberechi Eze's form. The next question I put down was, where will the chances and subsequent goals come from? And that is a fear that I have going into a lot of games at the moment. Do we back Noni Madueke to produce enough outputs? I know he scored yesterday, but I'm talking bigger picture here. Not really. Trossard can be great and then ineffective. Martinelli can also be great, but also ineffective at times. Victor Gyökeres is blowing hot and cold. He's been better in the last month, but overall it's not good enough. Gabriel Jesus, for a centre-forward, doesn't carry enough goal for it. And Kai Havertz, who just started to tie things and knit things together, we've lost him again. So I'm worried about where these goals are going to come from. And then you think about the fact that Eza's not really doing it, that Odegaard's not doing it goals-wise, that Mikel Merino, who's always good for an important goal in a key moment, is not available. I have this fear going into a lot of our games right now about where the chances and subsequent goals will come from. We're going to take a short pause. And when we come back, we're going to continue working through some of those questions. We're also going to go through some individual performances. We're going to talk a little bit about how the game panned out, I beg your pardon, and some of the tactical aspects of it. And of course, we'll take a bunch of your questions from the live chat as well. We've got plenty of time today, so we'll work our way through it all. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with okjersey.com. Looking for football shirts? Head over to okjersey.com and enter the discount code Harry for 8% off.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. I know it's not the most happy show today, but if you haven't done so already, I'd love it if you could leave a like on the video. There's hundreds and hundreds of you watching, but we've only got a handful of likes on the board. So let's improve on that. It really, really does help. Okay. My next question that I wrote down was, if we win the league, and I put in brackets, and we should, would we be the best of a very average bunch? Now, that shouldn't really matter, should it? Like, this is one of the questions that I probably wrote back on a little bit when I read it back this morning, but I thought it was worth sharing it with you, because the feeling that I get when I watch this Arsenal team is that we're very, very good in some aspects and in some elements of the game, but we're also quite average in others. And I just wonder if this is what's required now. This is what we need to be successful, and come the end of the season, we're going to see that, we're going to understand that, and we're going to look. If we win the league, we're going to bloody enjoy it, and nobody's going to tell me that we didn't deserve to win it or that we were rubbish. It's not going to make the slightest bit of difference to me. But coming away from that game yesterday, I did feel that, and that's why I jotted it down, because I wanted to put it to you. Does it feel like we're in a place where, I mean, you could argue it the other way. The league's more competitive in that everyone's taking points off everyone. We're going to win. If we do win it, we're going to win it on a pretty low points tally based on what we've seen be required in recent seasons. And the last question that I wrote down, and this is probably the one that I want to talk about the most. This is something that I grew irritated with when I was on my way home. So I'm on my way home. I'm wherever I've got signal along the way. I'm looking at social media, I'm reading people's comments, I'm exchanging, messages with other Arsenal fans, and we're having lots of conversations about what we've just seen and what's just unfolded. And one of the things that I took away from Mikel Arteta's press conference and from some of the post-match interviews was, why do we hyper-focus on individual misses and individual chances? Like in last night's case, it was Gabriel Martinelli's miss late on in the game. If you go back to the Nottingham Forest game, again, there was a hyper focus post-match on a chance that Gabriel Martinelli missed. Now, it's not to pick on Gabriel Martinelli, because he's not the only one, and I want to make that very, very clear, okay? But we've got this tendency, and this is something that comes from Mikel Arteta, because when he flags this stuff, what it does is it kind of plants a seed in everybody else's mind, and it becomes a bigger thing than it should be. So like last night, it was like, oh, how did Martinelli not score that? If Martinelli scores that, we win and we get a brilliant 3 points and we leave Brentford. Yeah, obviously, if he sticks it in the back of the net, we're all going, wow, we were pegged back. We rode the storm. Brentford were great after they equalised. We had to ride it out, and then we managed in the end to nick it. And that's the sign of champions. That's what winners do. That's what the narrative would have been had Martinelli's effort found the back of the net. There's, again, I'll say it again, a hyper focus on that individual moment in the game. Why? Partly because the manager brings it up. He does it a lot. When we don't win a game, he will point to the periods in which he'll say that we were in control, that we were dominant. I understand he's got to try and put a positive message across wherever he can. But actually, to even mention that miss in isolation, I think is maybe not deliberately, but it's someone trying to pull the wool over our eyes, or someone who's seeing what they want to see. Because the reality is that we are not creating enough chances. Okay. That's the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in right now. And you can sit there and you can talk about Gabriel Martinelli's miss all you like. But the truth of the matter is that our XG was 0.6 on the night, and we managed 2 attempts on target in the entire game. That's the actual problem. Okay, when Mikel Arteta was talking about Brentford and how you handle Brentford, one of the words he used was volume. Okay, they try and win set pieces, they try and win throw-ins, they force you into making those clearances, and they want a high volume of throw-ins, a high volume of corners, so that they can put the ball in an area where it is very, very probable that they will score. And the higher the probability, the higher the volume, the more likely it is that Brentford get the outcome thereafter, which is a goal. The same applies in attacking football, generally speaking. If you don't create a high enough volume of chances, you will not score enough goals to win football matches. And then you're relying on being watertight defensively. And for most of the season, we have been. And that's why we are where we are. And that's why I keep saying that we lean on that defensive strength a lot to compensate for what we're maybe not doing at the other end of the pitch. And people keep saying to me, yeah, okay, we're second or third highest goal scorers in the Premier League. That's absolutely fine. But how many of those goals have come once the game state was in a certain way, when Arsenal were already in front, when they had their noses in front? That's really, really important. Breaking people down is something we find difficult. We find it really, really tough. And I don't like the focus being placed on Martinelli in this instance, because he's come on about 8-9 minutes before that. He's not had a chance. He's not had much of the ball because Arsenal couldn't get the ball down on the deck and on the floor at that point in the game. Kevin Keller makes a flipping great save as well. You got to give him his flowers for that. But I just think for me, the bigger issue is the lack of chance creation. And that is what we should be focused on, in my opinion, rather than any individual. I thought the first half was a half that you could divide into two. I thought in the first half of the first half, we failed to get the ball down. We failed to play. We failed to force the game into the pattern that we were expecting, which was Arsenal in possession, Arsenal on the ball, Arsenal moving it forward. Brentford looking to hit us on the break. But as the half went on, it developed into that pattern, didn't it? And I thought, okay, that's better. And I was quite confident that we were going to come out in the second half and score. Martin Odegaard was introduced at halftime. We talked about Eberechi Eze. I don't want to keep going over it because I don't want it to seem like I'm sticking the boot in on him. He wasn't the only one that underperformed, but because his performances in general have been quite of a low level, you understand why people want to make that a big talking point and have that discussion and conversation. And we probably should. Look, we've covered off the reasons already. Basically, I don't want to repeat myself. Odegaard comes on and makes a massive impact. Massive impact. Problem was that impact didn't last long enough. He didn't last long enough. He comes on, he brings a zip, he brings a tempo, he brings a purpose. And everything Arsenal are doing is that half a yard sharper and half a yard quicker when he's on. Some really clever passes to create chances, some really clever flick-ons, layoffs, turns, etc., etc. And then his influence massively wanes and dwindles. And, you were watching that first half, just to go back to that for a minute. And I remember saying to Rob Green, who I was working with last night, I remember saying to Rob Green, Arsenal need a bit more control. Arsenal needs someone who's going to dictate that tempo. And up until that point, Martin Zubimendi wasn't doing it. He wasn't doing it at all. I thought he had a really disappointing night as well. And so we needed to bring someone on that could do that. And even though Eze's performance in the first half was quite anonymous, and even though there was always going to be quite a reaction to that and the debate was going to rumble on and on and on and on, from a tactical perspective, it made sense to get Eze off and to bring Odegaard on because we saw an immediate upturn in the performance. But Once you score and you get your noses in front, this is where Arsenal have a problem. This is where Arsenal, I think, bump into a bit of an identity crisis. We get our noses in front, we're in the lead, and you go, okay, well, what do we want to do now? Do we want to lean on our defensive solidity that for most of the season has served us really, really well and has seen us go on to win games? Hope that Brentford come out at us a little bit more and look to pick them off on the break. Or do we want to go for the jugular? Do we want to go for the kill? And we had a chance. We had a moment where we could have applied the kill, basically, and we could have finished this game off. There was a ball on the right-hand side. Odegaard's coming forward. He's got Victor Gyökeres inside of him. I don't think Gyökeres' movement there is particularly good. I don't think Victor Gyökeres' body shape is particularly good in that. I don't think it screams to Martin Odegaard, give me the ball. So Odegaard carries it a little bit and then looks up. And what Gyökeres has done well, having not received the ball, is then made a move towards the far post, which has just pulled the defenders apart and created a corridor for Declan Rice to arrive in. And Odegaard tees it up to Declan Rice. Is it the best pass? Honestly, I haven't watched it again because I haven't brought myself to watching last night's game back yet. If I'm being completely transparent, he sort of tees up Declan Rice. And my initial thought is, don't take a touch, just wallop it. You're close enough to goal. You're a competent enough striker of the ball. Just wallop it. Wallop it, make it 2-0, settle the nerves, and let's see this game out. And Declan Rice tries to overcomplicate it. He takes an initial touch, which maybe suggests that the pass from Martin Odegaard wasn't quite good enough. He didn't feel like it was teed up for him to hit it. But he plays it to Victor Gyökeres. He has his pocket picked, and the whole move breaks down. And it's very, very shortly after that that Brentford go down the other end and score. And it's a long ball into the box again. It's a set piece. Ball into the box, flicked on. I've seen some Arsenal fans on social media moaning about some of the pushing and shoving and jostling for position going on in the box and calling foul. Have a day off. We do that every single week to others. We got a taste of our own medicine last night from Brentford in that sense, and we got to take it on the chin and move on. Martin Odegaard goes to make a clearance. He goes to try and hook the ball away. He ends up kicking into Keane Lewis Potter rather than the ball, and he sort of injures himself. And after that, Martin Odegaard became a complete non-entity in the game. Did he struggle to shake off the knock? Maybe, but whatever reason you want to sort of put on it, Martin Odegaard's influence completely disappeared at that stage of the game. We then went back to having no control. We then went back to not being able to get our foot on the ball. We then went back to allowing Brentford to turn the game into exactly the game that Brentford wanted it to be. And there was only really, I know Martinelli missed that chance. There was only really going to be one deserved winner, is how I'll put it, come the end of the game. But even that bit of defending from Martin Odegaard is poor. It's poor. Like, I always have sympathy for defenses when a ball comes into the box. So you're set for that delivery, the trajectory of that delivery, the direction of that delivery. And then the second ball, the flick on, completely thrusts that all up into the air. Then it becomes a lottery, because once you make that first contact with the ball and you divert it and adjust its course, you end up in a scenario where you're having to reset. You might be in the wrong position. There's not a great deal you can do about it because your positioning was designed to deal with the initial ball in a box. So I do always, just by default, have more sympathy for defenses when there's a flick on, when there's a second ball, etc., etc. But yeah, he's got to do more there, because what he does is he looks to let the ball run across his body so he can hook it away. That's what he attempts and tries there. Whereas you got to turn and face the ball. You got to adjust your body position. You got to make it really, really difficult for the guy to get there. You got to put your body in the right position so that, and I'm certain Gabriel would have done this because Gabriel does it all the time, so that when he comes into the back of you, desperately trying to get on the end of it, you feel a bit of contact, you go down, you win a free kick, the whole situation is over. So I do have sympathy with the situation, and Mikel Arteta talked about the volume of those scenarios that Brentford created. We were probably always going to concede, given the way that the game developed and the frequency with which they were winning corners and throw-ins deep inside our territory. But I thought the individual defending there, it needed to be better. It needed to be better. Yeah, it needed to be better. When I talk about Brentford sort of serving up Arsenal a kind of taste of their own medicine, watching that last night reminded me of a Patreon podcast that we did recently. And what I'm going to do, actually, I think I'm going to do this now while I remember, so that I don't end up forgetting. I'm just going to go back and find this Patreon episode, because it was an episode in which we talked about Arsenal's set piece prowess. It was an episode in which I broke down what I think it is that Arsenal focus on, and the key principles that Arsenal apply each and every time they have a set piece, which has made them really, really formidable in that department. I think it's really, really important to understand what it is that we do, because I think a lot of the things that we do, you can't even prevent them. Like, there's no quick fix, there's no quick remedy as a defending side. Look, I've just changed this episode. I'm going to leave it like that for 24 hours, just to give you guys a taste as well of what we do over on Patreon. And you know what? I'm going to put it in the link in the description. I'm going to put the link, I beg your pardon, in the description below. Hold on. Set piece Patreon episode. There we go. Okay. So I've shared that there. Okay. I'll put it in the live chat as well. For those of you that are with us live at the moment. There you go. Okay. So that's a piece that we did on Arsenal set pieces and why we're so difficult to defend against. Brentford apply a lot of the same things. A lot of the ideology that you see existing at Arsenal right now around set pieces, a lot of it stems from Brentford. Nicholas Jova was at Brentford. Okay. Inaki Kanya, our goalkeeping coach, was at Brentford. Jorgensen, who is with Arsenal as well, also from Brentford. So we had a taste of our own medicine, and we knew it was coming, and we know exactly what it is that Brentford look to do, because, as I say, our approaches are really, really similar, and you still can't stop it when it's done really well and done right. And so you have to go back to the root cause, and the root cause is that you are conceding a lot of set pieces, throw-ins, corners, whatever they might be, and you're conceding them so regularly that the volume increases, and therefore there's going to be a time where you come unstuck and you end up getting punished for it. So yeah, I think go and listen to that Patreon pod. It's unlocked for now, which means anyone can listen to it. And if you like it, then do sign up. Just £3 a month. You get access to bonus content like that. You also get access to our Discord server, as well as all our episodes ad free. So go over and check that out. But I think there's certain principles that you cannot defend. Like, there's nothing you can do about them. And Brentford have cracked it just like we have. And therefore, you've got to stop the problem at its root. And I think you've got to stop conceding so many of those corners and throw-ins. But also what Brentford have that we don't have is that they have this unbelievable delivery from a throw-in. Coyote, his throw-in's unbelievable. We don't have a player that can launch the ball like that. I know Declan Rice tries, but it's not the same, is it? It's not the same. Some of the things I was a bit disappointed with yesterday, outside of what I've already covered, I mentioned that key chance. We've kind of covered off Martinelli's chance. The lack of a response to the equalizer that we conceded was really, really frustrating. It felt like the game got away from us, but there wasn't that light bulb moment, to use a Mikel Arteta example, where we all went, hold on, we need to wake the fuck up here and get going again. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. It just came out. So the lack of response to an equalizer. Bukayo Saka's introduction was a waste of time. He didn't look fit to me. He didn't look fit. And actually, unless he was completely gone, like physically, Noni Madueke had just scored. Noni Madueke had produced it. I'm so frustrated, by the way. I haven't even covered that goal off. Brilliant cross from Nkapie. Excellent from Madueke in that he knows that he just needs to steer the ball back towards where it came from. And Kelleher, whose sort of balance was wrong at the time, hadn't been able to set himself quickly enough, largely because of the speed and the veracity of Nkapie's cross. He couldn't then readjust and get across and save it. But there's Madueke buzzing, just scored a goal. do you then need to make that change and bring on a half-fit Bukayo Saka? If you do need to make that change, i.e. you need to get Noni Madueke off, then why wouldn't you put Gabriel Martinelli on the right-hand side where he's done really, really well of late? I don't know. It felt like it was too forced with Bukayo Saka. It was too forced yesterday, and he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. What I'm seeing a lot within this Arsenal squad, and the fact that we've got a big squad means, and I know I said something to this effect really recently on a pod, the fact that we've got so many options means that when people aren't performing, you can take them out. You don't have to wait for them to play their way through it. You can bring others in and, you can hopefully see more of an impact and more of an impetus. But we're seeing with a lot of players that they're really struggling to find a consistent performance level. And that is, I don't know, is that a consequence of having the bigger squad? Is it a negative consequence? I really don't know, but it's an observation that I've made and something that I keep thinking about. Why is it that like Victor Gyökeres will be great one week and not so good the next week? And the same with Leandro Trossard and the same with, Martin Odegaard, Eza, Saka. It's something that we're seeing all the time. Zubimendi overall has been a really, really good signing for Arsenal, but I can think of a handful of games this season where the game's completely bypassed him. Last night was another example of that. So we lacked control. We lacked technical security. We lack quality. We lack creativity. I can forgive conceding a goal the way that we did away at Brentford. And I can forgive the fact that we left there with a point rather than all three. What I'm really struggling with is the performance. And the reason I'm struggling with the performance is because we've seen this film before. And I'm not just talking about finishing second in previous seasons. We've seen Arsenal turn up and put performances in like this far too often this season. Far too often. And that worries me. That concerns me. Look, we're going to take another really, really short pause. When we come back, we'll spend the rest of the show taking your thoughts, your comments, and your questions from the live chat. So please don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with okjersey.com. Looking for football shirts? Head over to okjersey.com and enter the discount code Harry for 8% off.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It really, really does help. We'd love to hear from you in the live chat between now and the end of the show. So get your thoughts, get your comments, get your questions in, and we'll work our way through. Rumble says, I'm going to piss a lot of the viewers off here, but I think Madueke has been decent since he's been here. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of good performances from Noni Madueke. The issue that I think people will always highlight and the thing that people will always go back to, particularly in this kind of stats-based world that it feels like we're living in right now, is that there hasn't always been the outputs there, number of goals, assists, etc. But I don't look at Noni Madueke and think, he's been poor. What I do think with Noni Madueke is what I've just been saying about various others, that the performance levels are either really high or they're kind of really low, and there's not a consistent medium level with him. Do you see what I mean? Like, it's kind of really, he's either really effective or he's not. In fairness, yesterday I thought he struggled in the game up until when he scored, but then he contributes. So who are we to have a pop at him? Mr. Flips says, I wish Madueke and Eze weren't subbed, especially when Odegaard conceded the equaliser. Good thing there is a game in hand with the Wolves game. Yeah, I mean, look, we talk about how the pendulum keeps swinging one way and then back the other. Obviously, we play Wolves on Wednesday night, and if we win that, we go 7 points clear. And I know City then have the opportunity, don't they, to play their game in hand, which it will be at that point, and reduce that gap back down to 4. But you've got to go and do it. And, that's the kind of the psychological warfare that is ongoing at the moment as well. Captain Uncle says, we just gave the shark legs. Can you give a shark legs? What would a shark look like with legs? It's a really interesting way of putting it. Is that a phrase? I've not heard that before. But he says, and that's the bigger issue for me. We gave them belief after their last two results, and they might turn into a different beast. I was really worried about their victory at Liverpool, not because of the fact they picked up 3 points, but more so because of what that might have done for them psychologically. Did they flick a switch at Liverpool? I think when you look at the way they went and blew Fulham away, in midweek, you could certainly make that argument. I think you need a bigger sample size, to kind of judge that. But I think in time, we'll probably look back at that Liverpool game and think this was when City really came to the party. Skillsman Swift says, does anyone think Symeou will be performing for us in the way that he's been performing for City? Honestly, I don't, because I can't quite put my finger on what it is at the moment. Our attacking ecosystem is broken, isn't it? Like there's something about it that I don't like. And I know people keep saying, yeah, but look at the volume of goals that we've scored. Yes, but so many of those goals are coming from outside of our forward line, which still suggests that the forward line isn't doing enough. Jid says, I have a suggestion. After games where we drop points, please start having phone-in shows. I would like to see some people in the chat, at the very least, try to articulate and defend what they think we should have done. Too many people with half-baked should-haves. I'm sure it would drive viewership. Yeah, it's a decent idea. I'm not opposed to doing phone-ins and stuff like that. If there's a lot of people interested in it, then we can do it. I do agree with you that you always get half-baked should-haves, would-haves, and could-haves. But that's in life generally, I think. Varendra says, if you listen to Bernardo Silva, and he's talking about the interview that he gave post Liverpool, they were losing belief, and Arsenal have literally given them hope to push. I agree with that. They were on their knees, weren't they, confidence-wise? They really were. Wes Bird says, look, we have to win the war, not every battle. I like the way you've put that. Gam Solar says, Harry, for a team that hasn't done it in many years, winning the title is very, very difficult. I think if the media didn't make us favourites from the start, we would have been less anxious. Yeah, maybe, but you've got to deal with that, innit? If you want to get over the line, you got to overcome that. Dank says, dear Harry, I love that. Thank you, sir. He says, the way Arteta name dropped Martinelli post-match was shocking, considering that was our lone big chance. Love Arteta, but it really irks me how he reduces matches to rare chances. Yeah, and that is in line with something I said earlier on the pod. I don't know if you've just joined us, that one of my big frustrations is that there's always this focus post-game, isn't there, on, this person or that person missed a chance, or there was this opportunity, or there was that opportunity. And the reality is that, no, the deeper issue and the bigger problem here is that we're not doing enough. In general, we're not creating that volume of chances to be able to then, score enough goals in the right game state. That's the caveat that you need to put with. If you're 1-0 up, then it's easier to go and get the second and third, because the opposition's got to throw the kitchen sink at you at some point. And we see that a lot. When Arsenal tend to win games 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, whatever, you see that quite a lot, don't you? That they get their noses in front and then the game changes. But up until they get their noses in front, and sometimes that can take a good while, it's a bit of a nothing game, and we're not creating, like, I remember Arsenal teams of the past used to go out in the first 15, 20 minutes and completely rip you apart. And you'd look at it and you'd go, well, the game was done after 20 minutes. You don't feel that with this team, and therefore everything feels like harder work. And then if it feels like harder work, it takes its toll on the players, not just physically, but mentally as well. And you end up being burnt out and fatigued when you get to the business end of the season. So, and we've had this conversation many times this season, it does feel like victories are really hard work for us at the moment. And I don't like that. And that goes back to the question that we put in the poll very, very early on in the show today. I'm just trying to find the results to that. And the question I put was, do we give off the aura of champions? Now, just under a couple of hundred of you have voted on that. A resounding 87% saying no. Can we sort of improve on that and start to give off that aura between now and the end of the season if there's an upturn in performances and results? Yeah, absolutely. But as of now, as of Friday, the 13th of February, we're not feeling it, are we? in terms of us being there and ready to just go on and win it. Now, I've said this many, many times. If we win it this year, we should win it this year. We're going to enjoy every single moment of it. But I'm struggling at the moment. I'm struggling with enjoyment because of how tense and nervy it all is. And if I see us crown Premier League champions, for me, I'm going to say this was the best one ever. Not because it was a bigger achievement than what the Invincibles did, or the double winning sides, or because the football was better, but because for me it'll be special because I'm covering it. You know, I'm much closer to it than I've ever been. I'm sort of covering it every week. I'm living the dream in terms of the career that I always wanted, and that's amazing. And I don't take that for granted. And I'll look back at it and I'll say, amazing, amazing, amazing. But am I enjoying it right now? No, I'm not. I'm stressed. I'm full of anxiety. Therefore, I can't be surprised that you're seeing that on the pitch at times, and in the stands. And I can't criticize that. People I see this thing a lot. I see people say, Arsenal are ready to win a title, but the fans aren't. The fans aren't, because for most of them, it's been, let me rephrase that. For a lot of them, they've never seen it. How can you be ready for something that you've never seen? You don't know what it is. There's I know a lot of Arsenal fans that's slightly younger than me that don't remember the Invincibles even, or were alive during the Invincibles, but were too young to really kind of be conscious and aware of it. So yeah, let's see what's going to happen. But there's a lot of players that are underperforming at the moment. There's a lot of issues, I think, with the way that we attack. We're not effective enough. We need to find different solutions, different ways of doing things. We're definitely missing Kai Havertz, and there's only been one game, but we're missing him. We're definitely going to miss Mikel Merino in the running as well. Another really important and effective player. So yeah, and Wesbird says, I'm not anxious yet, to be honest, Harry, but every time we play, I beg your pardon, I feel nauseous. Yeah, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. But the thing that's really got me about last night, and I'll just sort of repeat this to kind of wrap it up and to summarize, is I was looking at that team and I didn't know where a goal was going to come from. I didn't feel like we were going to score up until we did. Not really, not truly, not deep down. And when it was drawn back level, I never felt that we were going to go on and win it. And, you won't always manage to do that, but you should feel like you can. And I don't always feel like we can when it comes to needing. I feel like a lot of the time, 90% of the time, we're going to do the defensive job that we need to. But when it comes to the attacking side of our game, I sort of look at it and I think something's missing. And the numbers are misleading, because I know there'll be a lot of people in the comments. They go, we've scored the third amount of goals in the Premier League this season or whatever. And I'll push back and I'll say to you, how many of those goals and how much stat padding did we do when the game state was in a certain way? When the game is competitive, when we don't get our noses in front early, we struggle. And if we're pegged back like we were last night, having worked so hard to find that one goal, do we have it in us to go and score another one? Man City have that in them. They don't have the defensive solidity that we do, although Mark Gay, in a really short space of time, has improved them in that sense. But they have an attacking swagger and an unpredictability and an effectiveness in the final third that Arsenal just don't have. And is it down to coaching? Is it down to individual players? It feels like whatever players you pick, the same issues exist. And that is why I have my concerns. Bigger picture, still 4 points clear, which is great. Still in a really good spot overall. Got to draw a line under this one and move on. I keep saying that after draws or defeats, you can't afford to dwell on them too much. But you've absolutely got to analyze it. You've absolutely got to break it down, and you've absolutely got to be working day and night to try and find solutions to the problems that we're experiencing. And I'm sure that behind the scenes that is happening. But yeah, a disappointing night, more so based on the performance for me than the actual result and outcome. I'm wise enough to know that football don't always go your way. That's what makes football such a special sport and a special game. But when the performance isn't anywhere near the level that you expect, then I think you have to ask questions. I think you are well within your rights to feel concerned. And these are my concerns. Thank you so much for listening. I said we might run over. We didn't in the end. Turns out that I got it all off my chest in much quicker time, which is always good because nobody wants to listen to me bleating on for any longer. If you haven't done so already, please do leave a like on the video. It really does help. Subscribe if you're watching it back on playback. Leave us a hype as well. And that's what the kids are doing at the moment. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review. That's really important and really does help. There is a Patreon episode linked in the description, which is available to all of you for the next 24 hours to give you guys an idea of what we do over on Patreon. This one was a focus on why we're so effective from set pieces. And the reason I've chosen to unlock that one for the next 24 hours is because a lot of the principles that I talk about there are the principles that we were up against when Brentford decided to give us a taste of our own medicine. And I wanted to highlight why it's quite difficult to defend against those sort of set pieces and why it is that the opposition make it nigh on impossible for you to constantly resist that kind of onslaught. Rumble says in the live chat, embrace the fight, people. You're absolutely right. Declan Rice was absolutely right as well. It was never going to come easy. No one's going to hand it to us. We got to go and win it. We go again on Sunday in the FA Cup, which might be quite nice, actually, just to have that reprieve from the Premier League after a disappointing result. And then we go again with a massive week, away games at Wolves and at Tottenham. And, if we go and win those two games, the picture can look very different again. And in a much more positive way, I'm meaning. So, yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you all soon. Until the next time, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful day up the Arsenal. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Come on, you Gunners.